The cage in the Shadow's cage was placed deep inside the facility, hidden from the open world. Thick metal bars surrounded it from all sides. Cold lights flickered above, casting long shadows that made the place look more like a dungeon than a research lab. The room was quiet, except for the hum of machines and the occasional sound of footsteps outside the steel doors. Inside, the cage sat a woman, though most didn't call her that. They called her the alien, the creature, or simply it. She had soft blue skin that shimmered faintly under the light, long white hair that fell over her shoulders like silk, and glowing eyes that held more sadness than anger. Her name was Rinya. No one asked, no one cared. To them, she was a threat, something dangerous, something to be kept away from the rest of humanity. She never spoke, not since the day they captured her. Arianya didn't scream or fight. She sat quietly, her hands resting on her lap, her body thin from lack of food, her lips dry. She looked out through the bars, but didn't focus on anything. It had been weeks, maybe months' time, meant nothing in that place. She had been taken from her ship after it crashed near a human outpost. She had tried to explain, but no one listened. Soldiers dragged her away. Doctors scanned her. Politicians gave orders. And finally, they locked her here alone. The guards didn't speak to her. If they did, it was only to insult her or laugh behind the glass. Children were never allowed in this part of the facility. Adults passed by quickly. Everyone avoided her eyes, afraid that she might do something with just one look. They believed lies. They believed stories about her, kind, that they were monsters. But no one ever asked her the truth. One day something changed. A man walked into the room. He wore a dusty brown jacket and carried a toolbox. His name was Ethan. He wasn't a guard or a scientist. He was just a technician, called in to fix a broken power panel near the cage. He didn't know what Torhu was inside. He didn't even know the facility had a cage like this when he stepped into the room. He stopped. His eyes met hers. He froze, not out of fear, but something else. Confusion maybe, curiosity. He had expected to see some wild beast, some dangerous alien locked away for good reason. But what he saw was a woman sitting quietly, too thin, too pale, too silent. Who is she? Ethan asked the guard standing near the door. Don't bother, just an alien. Dangerous type. Stay back and do your job, the guard replied, without looking up from his tablet. Ethan didn't move. His eyes stayed on Rinya. She didn't blink. She didn't move either. But there was something in her gaze, something human. He finished his repair job quickly. But before leaving, he looked at her again. This time, he spoke softly. Can you hear me? She didn't answer. Not with words, but her head tilted slightly. He noticed. You can't you? He said, still whispering, as if afraid someone might hear. Her fingers moved, just a little, barely noticeable. Ethan took that as a yes. He wanted to ask more, but the guard glared at him. I said, stay back. Ethan left the room, but something in him had changed. He couldn't stop thinking about her, the way she sat, the sadness in her eyes, the silence that didn't feel empty, it felt trapped. She didn't look like a monster. She looked like someone who had lost everything. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Images of her face kept returning to his mind. Who was she really? What had she done to be locked away like that? The next day, Ethan returned to the facility. He told the front desk he had more repairs to do, though there weren't any scheduled. He walked back to the cage. The guard raised an eyebrow, but didn't stop him. Again, Rinya sat silently. This time Ethan brought a bottle of water and a small packet of food, nothing special, just a wrapped protein bar. He placed them near the bars, careful not to cross the invisible line. She looked at the items. Slowly, she reached out and pulled them close. You're not like what they say, are you? Ethan said. Rinya finally spoke. Her voice was low, rough from not speaking for so long. I am not what they think. Ethan felt a chill down his spine, not from fear, but from understanding. She could speak. She could understand, and maybe she was never a danger at all. The human returned. Ethan didn't return to the facility. The next day, he tried to stay away. He told himself it wasn't his problem. He was just a technician. He wasn't a soldier, or a hero, or anyone important. But Rinya's voice, those 5 quiet words, kept echoing in his mind. I am not what they think. He tried to distract himself, worked late, avoided the news, stayed off the net, but nothing helped. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Not the alien, the woman with sadness in her eyes and chains on her soul. On the 3rd night, he went back. This time, it wasn't about fixing wires, it was about answers. The guard on duty was different, younger, bored, careless. He barely glanced up when Ethan walked past. Maintenance again, the guard asked. Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. He stepped into the room. Arianya was there, still sitting, still silent, still watching. But this time, her eyes followed him more closely. When he stopped, just outside the cage, she spoke first. You came back. Ethan exhaled slowly. Yeah, he said. Couldn't stop thinking about you. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Most run. I'm not most, he replied, sitting down on the floor outside her cage. He placed a sealed food pouch near the bars. I don't think you're a monster. She looked at the food, then back at him. They believe lies. Ethan nodded. Then tell me the truth. She hesitated. For a long time, she just stared at the wall. The hum of the power lights above seemed louder now, like the whole room was holding its breath. My ship was not built for war, she began slowly. I was a scout, a watcher. We were searching for places to live, not to fight. Ethan leaned in. Your planet was destroyed, burned, not by humans, by others. We ran. My pod crashed. I survived. And they captured you. She nodded. They feared what I am, not who I am. Ethan clenched his fists. What exactly do they fear? Rinya turned her hand toward him slowly, as if afraid he would back away. A faint blue light pulsed in her palm, gentle, warm, not fire, not danger, just energy. This, she said softly. They think it's a weapon. It's not. What is it? A gift. To heal. To protect. Ethan stared at the light, hypnotized. Then why the cage? Her voice broke slightly. Because they don't understand. Ethan stood up and began to pace. She wasn't a killer. She wasn't a threat. She was imprisoned for what she could do, not what she had done. And everyone just accepted it. No trial. No rights. No voice. He couldn't believe it. But the more he looked at her, the more he did. When he turned back, her hand was still raised, palm open. A gentle warmth radiated from it. He moved closer. May I? He asked. She nodded. He reached out slowly and placed his hand in hers. The light spread gently across his skin, like the warmth of morning sun. He gasped, not from pain, but from the feeling. For a moment, it felt like all the worry, fear, and doubt was lifted from his heart, and then it stopped. What was that? He whispered. A memory, Rinya said, quietly. I showed you what I see when I look at you. He looked into her eyes. And what do you see? Hope. A sharp knock broke the moment. Ethan pulled his hand back. The guard's voice called from the door. You done in there? Ethan cleared his throat. Almost. He turned back to Rinya, whispering quickly, I'll come back. I promise. Before he left, she said, they will watch you now. Ethan paused. Why? Because you saw me. And just like that, everything changed. As Ethan walked back through the cold halls, he didn't notice the security cameras turning his way. Didn't notice the red lights blinking in quiet corners. Someone else had seen him too. A voice in the darkness. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the small glow left on his hand, just a trace of the energy Rinya had shown him. It had faded almost completely, but he could still feel it, not just on his skin, in his chest, in his mind. Something had shifted, and he knew now someone was watching. His tablet had received no less than 4 new security alerts from the facility's servers. Nothing specific, just quiet flags. Unauthorized proximity. Possible contamination. Unauthorized conversation. He hadn't told anyone about Rinya, hadn't shared the recordings, hadn't even filed his repair report. But the system, it already knew. That morning, he went back to work as usual. Nothing in his movement gave him away. But inside, his thoughts spun faster than the city's orbiting satellites. He couldn't shake the feeling. Rinya was running out of time. At the facility, 2 new guards stood near the restricted section, armed, armored, and alert. Ethan's badge still worked. For now. They let him pass, but one of them muttered under his breath, "Maintenance guys, getting a little too curious." He ignored them. Inside the cage room, Rinya was awake, standing this time. The moment he entered, she turned, her eyes already locked on his. "They know," she said before he could speak. "I figured. You must stop coming." "Can't?" She tilted her head. "You are putting yourself in danger." "Maybe, but someone has to listen to you. Someone has to believe you." She stepped closer to the bars. Her voice was softer this time. "I thought no one ever would." Ethan crouched near the bars. "Rinya, why did you really crash here?" She hesitated. Double quotes. "I told you, I was running from a war, from death. But there's more." She closed her eyes for a moment. "I was carrying something. A weapon." "No," she said quickly. "A child." Ethan froze. "Your child?" "No, not by blood, by bond. A youngling of my kind. She was dying. I took her. I ran." "Where is she now?" Rinya looked down. She didn't survive the crash. They took her body, never returned it. They never even asked why I was holding her so tight. Ethan's throat tightened. The sadness in Rinya's voice was deeper than anything he'd heard. Not alien, just human. "I'm sorry," he said. "I did not come to hurt your world. I only wanted her to live." Ethan felt rage build inside him. They had called her a monster, but never once had they tried to understand. Later that night, Ethan broke into a section of the facility database only high-clearance officials had access to. He used tools from his technician kit, carefully bouncing his connection through 6 backup relays. What he found made his stomach twist.rinya single quotes as file had been altered twice. Original. Entry unarmed lifeform retrieved, no hostile action recorded. Second update. Hostile alien detained, potential psychic threat. Recommendation. Indefinite isolation. The second update came from a name Ethan didn't recognize. Director Arlen Mave. Internal Security Division. Not science. Not research. Not even military. Just containment. There was also a memo, half corrupted, that read, "No trial. No contact. She's not here to be studied. She's here to disappear." Ethan stared at the screen in silence. This wasn't fear. This was control. Someone at the top had made sure Rinya would never be heard. They were trying to erase her. Not because she was dangerous, but because she was proof. Proof that the enemy wasn't always what it seemed. The next day, Ethan returned to the cage with something hidden in his jacket, a small memory core, the kind used in old field recorders. He handed it to Rinya through the bars. "What is this?" she asked. "A way to tell your story," Ethan said. "Can you put your thoughts into it? Memories, emotions." She looked at him. "I can try." "Good, because if they shut you down tomorrow, the world will still hear your truth." As Rinya touched the core, it began to glow with that same soft blue light. Her fingers trembled, but she kept going. Suddenly, the room lights went red. "Security breach," a voice came over the intercom. "Technician Ethan Kerr. Stand away from the cage." You are in violation of containment protocol. He grabbed the recorder from her hand. I'll come back, he whispered. She nodded once, but as he turned to leave, 2 guards were already standing at the door. You need to come with us, sir. Ethan didn't resist, but in his hand, the recorder was still warm. Deep in her cage, Raina sat back down, .com once more. But for the first time, she whispered not to herself, but to the dark above her. He will return, and the room, though silent, seemed to believe. Her secrets in the systemth room, where they held Ethan, wasn't a prison cell. Not officially, but it might as well have been. Plain metal walls, 1 chair, no windows, and a blinking red light in the corner watching his every move. The silence was sharp, tense, like the facility was holding its breath. Ethan sat quietly, clutching the memory core hidden deep in his boot. Linen. They hadn't searched him properly, maybe because he wasn't a threat, maybe because they thought he'd break without pressure. They were wrong. After hours of silence, the door finally opened. 2 men entered. Both wore dark gray uniforms with no names or titles, but their cold stares said everything. They weren't scientists. They weren't guards. They were from internal control, the division no one ever talked about out loud. One of them sat across from Ethan. The other stood near the door, arms crossed. Technician Ethan Kerr, the seated man, said, "You've been in unauthorized contact with Subject X7. Her name is Rinya," Ethan said. "No. Her designation is X7. She's not a citizen, not human, and not your concern." Ethan leaned forward. "Then why am I here?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he tapped a tablet on the table. Grainy footage played Ethan speaking to Rinya, passing her food, touching her hand. It looked worse without context. "You violated 3 containment protocols," the man continued, "and shared direct contact with an undocumented alien species. We could have you jailed for espionage." "Espionage," Ethan repeated, trying not to laugh. "I'm not a spy. I'm an engineer who saw something wrong and didn't look away." "You saw what we allowed you to see." "No," Ethan said firmly. "I saw what you tried to bury. She's not a threat. She's not a monster. She was running from something worse, and you locked her up because it was easier than understanding her." Silence. The man stared at him, face unreadable. Then he said quietly, "You've made a mistake, Mr. Kerr." 3 hours later, they let him go. No charges, no warnings, no files signed, but something was off as he walked out of the facility. He noticed cameras turning to follow him. An armed drone hovered briefly above the gate. Even his clearance badge gave a quiet buzz when he scanned it, like the system knew he didn't belong anymore. He was being watched, still. He had what he needed. Back at his apartment, Ethan locked the doors, sealed the windows, and disabled every smart device. He opened an old terminal completely offline and inserted the memory core. Rinya had touched dot. The screen flickered dot, then bloomed into light. Not just video but sensation. Images filled the screen. A beautiful green world with glowing trees and cities built like living gardens. Tall, elegant people walking among wild animals without fear. Children laughing in fields of bluegrass. And then fire. Giant black ships falling from the sky. Screens, smoke, cities burning. Rinya was running, carrying the small child in her arms. She looked back just once and the entire sky behind her was ash. Ethan's hands shook as he watched, then came her voice. Soft but clear. "If you're seeing this, I am no longer safe. My world is gone, but I believe yours can be different. If someone remembers me not as a monster, but as a mother, then maybe there is hope." Ethan closed the file. Tears blurred his vision. This wasn't just about saving Rinya anymore. This was about exposing the lie. The next day, he returned to the facility, but not through the front door. He used a forgotten underground service tunnel built decades ago on that maintenance never logged. He had mapped it years ago, while fixing faulty wiring. Now, it was his only way in. Inside, everything had changed. More guards, tighter patrols, cameras on every hallway. The cage room had been moved. They were hiding. Ethan crept through the shadows, avoiding motion sensors and patrol paths. It took him nearly 2 hours, but he found the new chamber deeper underground. Colder, darker. She was there, but she wasn't sitting anymore. She was standing, arms shackled, eyes glowing faintly, breathing slow. "Ethan," she whispered, before he even stepped into view. "How did you know?" he asked. "You came in through the floor?" "I felt it," he smiled. "Figures." She looked tired, more than before. "They're preparing to move me," she said. "Off-world. Secret. Lab. No records." "No," Ethan said. "I'm getting you out." Her head tilted. "How?" "I uploaded your message." She blinked. "To the system. To the public," he said. "It's spreading. People are seeing the truth." A distant alarm began to ring, soft, but growing. She frowned. "They know. Then we have to go. Now." The cage door wasn't locked with a key. It used a biometric scan, but Ethan had come prepared. He pulled a stolen handprint chip from his jacket, taken from the control room during his earlier detention. Risky, dangerous, and maybe only good for one use. He placed it on the reader. The light turned green. The cage opened with a hiss. Rinya stepped forward, chains clinking softly. Ethan reached out and unlocked them with the override tool he had hidden in his sleeve. She didn't run. Instead, she stepped beside him and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me," just as the hallway outside lit up red. Escape plant. Red lights pulsed along the hallway ceiling like a heartbeat. Somewhere above, the main alarm was beginning to howl. Footsteps echoed from both ends of the corridor, fast, heavy, and getting closer. Ethan grabbed Rinya's hand. "We need to move. Now?" She didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate. Together, they ran. Every second counted. The path Ethan chose wasn't part of any active blueprint. It had once been a ventilation shaft used for emergency evacuation testing, abandoned after budget cuts, never fully sealed. He'd repaired lights in this sector long ago, and he remembered one specific panel behind the lower lab wall that led into a maintenance tunnel, a tunnel no one guarded. As they turned the first corner, security bots rolled into views like machines with glowing red optics and electrified arms. Ethan pushed Rinya behind a support pillar. "Stay close," he whispered, pulling a small device from his jacket. It was a signal scrambler, only good for 30 seconds. He tossed it into the center of the hallway. Beep, flash, static. The bots froze. Confused. Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed Rinya's wrist and dashed past them as sparks erupted behind. They didn't speak. They just ran through one door, down a flight of emergency stairs, past old server rooms, and finally through a cracked wall panel Ethan had forced open weeks earlier. Rinya followed without complaint, though her breathing was labored. She hadn't walked freely in months, and her body was weak. Still, she ran. Behind them, sirens screamed louder. The facility was awake now, every security drone, every armored guard, every alarm tuned to one signal. Containment breach, subject X7 missing. Ethan and Rinya emerged into the narrow shaft below the main lab sector. It was dark and narrow, with only emergency lights flickering overhead. The air was damp, stale. No cameras, no sensors. It was a dead zone. For now, Ethan leaned Rinya against the wall. "We have 10 minutes before they triangulate this tunnel," he said, gasping. "I have an extraction waiting." "Where?" she asked, barely able to speak. "Loading Bay 6. On the edge of the industrial block. One of my friends owes me a favor." Rinya looked up at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you shouldn't be in a cage." "That's not all," she said gently. Ethan didn't reply for a second. Then, "Because I saw your memories." And I know what it's like to lose someone. Her eyes softened. For the first time, truly, she understood him. They moved again, this time slower, quieter. Each footstep echoed like thunder in the tight space. At the tunnel's end was a ladder leading into the outer corridor near the loading bay. Ethan climbed first, pushing the rusted hatch open carefully. Moonlight poured in cold, silver, and clean. He pulled Rinya up behind him. They were finally outside. For a brief second, both of them stood still. The sky above them stretched wide, full of stars. The air smelled like engine oil and rain. Cargo ships sat in the distance, humming softly. Two workers laughed near a docking bay, unaware of what was happening a few levels below. Ethan pointed toward a small supply truck parked across the platform. There, he said. My friend Bray set it up. It has fake IDs, a new clearance pass, and a route off-world in 40 minutes. We'll make it, Rinya whispered. But fate had other plans. They didn't notice the drone until it was too late. A high-pitched whine cut the silence, and a spotlight hit them hard. Ethan Kerr, Subject X7, stand down. Guards poured out of the corner, loading Bay 7, maybe more, all armed. Run, Ethan shouted. They sprinted toward the truck. A stun bolt flew past his head close enough to singe his jacket. Another struck the ground near Rinya, who stumbled but kept going. Her strength was failing fast. Ethan reached the truck door first, ripping it open. Get in. She collapsed inside. He followed, slamming the door just as a guard raised his weapon, before they could fire. The truck's engine roared to life, remotely activated by Bray's hack. The vehicle shot forward, knocking one guard aside and barreling down the side ramp at top speed. Bullets hit the back of the truck, but none pierced the shielded hull. Inside, Rinya lay curled on the seat, shaking. Are you okay? Ethan asked. She looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. They will never stop, then we don't stop, either. Bray's voice crackled through the comm system. You got her. Yeah, you better hold tight. Checkpoint scans are warming up. We've got 10 minutes until the route's blown. Just get us out. The truck swerved through the outskirts of the complex, bypassing active scan zones. Every second counted. I've been tracking the data you leaked, Ethan, Bray said. It's gone viral. Everyone's asking who she is, what they did. People are starting to question the system. Good, Ethan said. They should. There's one problem, Bray added. What? They've issued an order. Shoot. On sight. For both of you. Ethan's jaw tightened. But beside him, Rinya reached over and took his hand. Even in the chaos, her touch was warm. They may hunt us, she said softly, but you've already given me something they couldn't steal. What's that? Freedom. Hunted's truck sped through the wasteland beyond the outer walls, jagged terrain left behind by old wars and forgotten industries. Above them, satellites turned, drones searched, and orders echoed across frequencies. Locate and eliminate, inside the armored truck. Ethan tightened his grip on the wheel. Every bump in the road sent a jolt through his tired arms. Beside him, Rinya sat still, her face pale, her energy fading. Her powers had helped him escape, but they came at a cost. She hadn't used them in so long, and her body wasn't ready for this much stress. We're almost to the ridge, Ethan said, trying to sound calm. There's a drop zone just past the canyon. Bray's contact will meet us there. Rinya looked out the window. The stars above flickered like broken glass. They won't let us leave. Then we'll make them try. 5 kilometers behind them, a black-winged military cruiser hovered above the desert floor, silent and deadly. Inside, Director Arlen Maeve watched the screen with cold precision. They've gone dark, one officer reported. No comms. Number. GPS. They're using analog shielding. Expected, Maeve said, sipping cold tea. Dispatch hunter units, Gamma and Delta. They're not to survive past the ridge. What about civilian witnesses? Remove them? Meanwhile, Ethan guided the truck down into a narrow canyon. Rock walls rose high on both sides, forming a natural choke point too narrow for heavy cruisers, but perfect for an ambush. Not good, Ethan muttered. This place is a trap waiting to happen. Rinya closed her eyes. I feel them. 5, maybe 6, waiting ahead, human. Not all of them. He slammed the brakes. Dust rose in clouds as the truck skidded to a stop. Ethan stepped out, scanning the cliffs. The moonlight cast long, jagged shadows across the stones. Come out, he shouted. I know you're up there. A moment of silence, then a voice. Well done, Mr. Kerr. You made it farther than we expected. Ethan turned. 3 armored figures dropped from the rocks ahead. Not guards, not soldiers. Hunters. They wore black exosuits, featureless helmets, and plasma blades that hummed low and steady. These weren't meant to capture. They were meant to erase. Rinya stepped beside Ethan, her body trembling, but her eyes burning bright. Her palm glowed with soft blue light. Stand down, one of the hunters barked. Return the subject. Final warning. Ethan raised both hands. She's not your property. This is not a negotiation. They moved fast, too fast. 1. Charged toward Ethan, blade drawn. Rin. Ya raised her hand, and the air between them shimmered, like a sheet of liquid energy. The blade struck it, and stopped mid-air, sparking wildly. The hunter stumbled back. You've improved, the second said, circling them. I never forgot, Rinya replied. The second lunged at Herb. This time Ethan moved. He tackled the hunter mid-air, slamming them both into the canyon wall. The exosuit was strong, but Ethan had rage, adrenaline, and the knowledge that if he failed, Rinya would die. He didn't let go. The third hunter tried to flank them, but Rinya was faster. She extended both palms, and the ground rippled beneath him like water. He dropped, stunned, disoriented. She didn't kill them. She just stopped them, breathing hard. Ethan stood, wiping blood from his mouth. The 3 hunters lay still, unconscious. But he knew it wasn't over. Not yet. He helped Rinya back into the truck, slamming the doors shut. They sped off again, the canyon walls disappearing behind them. How much farther? Rinya asked. 15 minutes. Maybe less, Ethan said, if the pickup's on time. But even as he said it, a new sound filled the air, above them a roar. Ethan looked up through the windshield. Double quotes. Oh no. A sleek black aircraft, faster than anything Bray could have predicted, dropped through the clouds. It wasn't a cruiser. It wasn't a drone. It was Maeve's personal warbird, Brace. Ethan yelled. The ground exploded behind them as the warbird opened fire. Shockwaves cracked the earth, sending shards of metal and flame through the air. The truck swerved, nearly tipping. They're not trying to stop us, Ethan shouted. They're trying to destroy the whole canyon. Then we must stop them, Rinya said. How? She placed a hand on the dashboard. Through me. A pulse of light burst from her palms, spreading into the truck's systems. The engine roared louder. The speed doubled. The controls locked. Into her will, Ethan stared. You're driving the truck. Guiding it, she said softly. We're not done yet. At the canyon's end, Bray's shuttle appeared, barely hovering, ramped down, engine screaming against the storm of wind and rock. They're late, Ethan yelled. No, Rinya said. We're early. They skidded onto the ramp just as the shuttle lifted, barely clearing the rocks. Maeve single quotes as Warbird dove in pursuit, but too late. A burst of blue light. Rinya's final shield rose behind them, blinding and massive. The Warbird struck it, and fell. As the shuttle escaped the atmosphere, the earth fell quiet. Inside, Rinya collapsed into Ethan's arms, barely conscious. We made it, he whispered, holding her close. She didn't answer, but her breath was calm. For the first time in years she was free. The World Watch shuttle broke through the upper atmosphere in silence. Stars blooming all around like 1,000 watching eyes. Inside, The air was tense. Not from fear, from change. Something powerful had just happened. The world below was still burning, and above, the universe had just taken a breath. Ethan sat near the medical pod, staring through the glass. Rinya floated inside, suspended in a healing gel. Her skin had cracked during the escape. The strain of using her powers, after months of confinement, had pushed her to the edge. But she lived, and that was enough for now. Bray stood nearby, tapping through terminal logs, eyebrows furrowed. "Ethan," he said quietly, "we've got a problem." Ethan turned. "What now?" "They're spinning the story." Ethan's heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "Government channels already released statements. They're calling her a threat again. Saying she escaped with classified tech. Said you were compromised. A traitor." "And the video?" Ethan asked. "The memory core." Bray nodded. "We leaked it on the blacknet. Full file. No edits. It's spreading. Millions have seen it. People are asking questions. But me. Side is louder for now." Ethan stood and looked down at Rinya's face. Peaceful, fragile, innocent. "Then we make them listen," he said. "They didn't land on a planet. They docked at Outpost Zero, an ancient forgotten station orbiting a dead moon. It had no government oversight, no military patrols, just hackers, traitors, outlaws, and exiles. People who knew how to hide. People who weren't afraid of truth." Ethan stepped onto the platform with the core in his pocket. His face was swollen, his eyes burned from exhaustion. But his voice was fire. In a central hub lined with cracked screens and dusty consoles, he stood before a crowd of strangers and began to speak. "My name is Ethan Kerr. I was a technician, a nobody, and then I met her." He tapped the core. Rinya's message played again. Her voice filled the room. Her memories painted the stars. This time, no one interrupted. No one dismissed it. They listened. And when it ended, they stood in silence, and then someone clapped. Another joined in. Soon the entire hall was echoing with it. Not noise, support. Within hours, the message reached the outer colonies. The message was spreading faster than Maeve's lies. People began asking, who is X7 really? Why was she locked away? How many others have been silenced? A senator resigned. A reporter vanished. Activists marched in the capital of 3 major worlds, holding up banners that read, "She was never a monster. She was a mother." He saw her soul. Truth isn't a crime. The system couldn't contain it anymore. In a dark room somewhere on Earth, Director Arlen Maeve watched the chaos unfold across dozens of screens. Riots, resignations, investigations. He stared at a picture of Rin, glowing softly in a still frame, those blue eyes, unblinking, eternal. "This isn't over," he whispered. But even as he said it, the door behind him slid open. Armed soldiers stepped in, not his. Director Maeve once said, "You're under arrest for crimes against sentient life." Back on Outpost Zero, Rinya woke. Her eyes fluttered open, and the soft hum of the station surrounded her. She turned her head and found Ethan sleeping beside the pod, his hand still resting on the glass. She smiled, small but real. "He didn't leave," she whispered. A medic nearby smiled. "He never did." A week later, Rinya stood with Ethan on a high balcony overlooking the stars. "People think I'm a symbol now," she said softly. "You are, but I'm not perfect. I'm still afraid." Ethan nodded. "So is everyone who ever did something brave." She turned to him. "What now?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper, citizenship documents, signed by 3 independent systems. Protection, voice, rights. "Now," he said, handing it to her, "you live." She took the papers with shaking hands. "And you?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "I'll be right here, every step of the way." As they stood side by side, a new message was being prepared, a broadcast from Rinya herself, not edited, not hidden. Her story, her words, a voice the galaxy had, once locked away in fear, was now echoing into the stars.